Happy Wednesday as we reach the midway point of the week. And today on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, we get into more trade deadline talk as we look at players I'd love from the Pittsburgh Pirates and St. Louis Cardinals, plus trivia. Pair of former Toronto Blue Jays Fred McGriff and Scott Rowland recently inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. So we'll have some fun with trivia about those two gentlemen today. And in the first segment, coming right up here, we're going to get set for this afternoon's pitching matchup as Yusei Kikuchi is on the mound for the Toronto Blue Jays.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Yes, indeed. This is my first season hosting the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, but me personally, I've been locked on Toronto Blue Jay baseball ever since I can remember. Blue Jays baseball is a big deal for me. It's a big deal for my family as well. Perhaps that describes you, and perhaps that's why you're spending part of your day talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. I certainly thank you and appreciate you for that. The Locked On Blue Jay podcast, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'm really proud to mention that the Locked On Blue Jay podcast is the only daily Toronto Blue Jay podcast. So tune in, join me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday every week as we're talking all things Toronto Blue Jays. Of course, this season, all the Blue Jay games as well, I want to remind you, are available on SiriusXM. And if you're taking in today's episode on the Locked On Blue Jays YouTube page, I want to say hello and thank you for that. I want to welcome some new subscribers I've seen recently, Lauren Thompson, Vid Flyer, and Wayne Swiddick. Wayne, I certainly hope I'm getting that last name correct because I appreciate all three of you recently hitting that subscribe button. Welcome and thank you for that. And to the everydayers making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen every day, hello and thank you. Hit that 5-star review and leave a comment, please and thank you. Afternoon game today for the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, sort of, right? We'll count it as an afternoon game. It's a 4:10 p.m. Eastern first pitch. I mean, local time in LA, it's 1 p.m. So we'll count it as an afternoon game. And let's start today's episode by deep diving as we have Yusei Kikuchi versus Tony Gonsolin. Yusei Kikuchi, 7-3 on the season, ERA back under 4 at 3.92. The Blue Jays started by winning 7 of Kikuchi's first 8 starts. I mean, remember? Oh, shit. Hitting my hat here. Sorry, hitting my Blue Jay hat here. Sorry, Blue Jay hat. Oh my gosh, did I knock it off? Sorry, Blue Jay hat. If you're listening on the podcast, if you've seen my set design before, I've got a new blue hat here with the All-Star Game logo. I love this hat so much, so I wanted to make sure it was part of my set here, and I just nailed it with my right arm. So that's not a harbinger of things to come for a Toronto Blue Jay. That's just the trying to have a neat set here and hitting something by accident. So that is not a harbinger. Do not worry about that. But yes, Yusei Kikuchi, remember the Yusei and the Blue Jays, they started in lockstep this season. They won 7 of his first 8 starts. Now just 6-6 in Yusei Kikuchi starts since then. And what's really odd, and I mean really odd when you look at this, is Yusei is alternating entire months, not even start by start, entire months he's alternating really good with really poor. You look at Yusei Kikuchi in April. Well, that was a 4-0 Yusei Kikuchi with a 3.00 ERA. Yes, please. All around. Yes, please. Remember, this is the number 5 starter, right? I mean, all of that is really, really, really good for the number 5 starter. But then in May, so the second month of the season, 5.83 ERA. My goodness. As bad as Kikuchi was last season, his ERA wasn't even that high. Like that was awful. Then June, back to the promise, back to being excited about Yusei Kikuchi. 2.28 ERA in June. My goodness. But now in July, this is his 5th and obviously final start in the month of July. Well, he comes into this start with a 4.66 ERA so far this month in July. So really odd, some real extremes happening for Yusei Kikuchi. Now, overall, if you're looking big picture, Toronto Blue Jays have won 13 of Kikuchi's 20 starts. Again, I'm going to say that's the number 5 starter. 13-7 from the number 5 starter. That's outstanding. Remember in 2021 when the Blue Jays missed the play-in game by 1 game, they missed the playoffs by 2 games, and really it was because of the schedule, right? They couldn't play the COVID. They couldn't play at home until almost the end of the season. Remember, then they caught absolute fire once they could get back to Canada, of course. But during that season, Robbie Ray won the Cy Young. Well, remember the Blue Jays missed the play-in game by 1 game. They missed the playoffs by 2 games. Robbie Ray wins the Cy Young. Well, the Blue Jays were 17-17 when Robbie Ray started. I'm not impressed by that at all. Wouldn't we have traded a Robbie Ray Cy Young for another win or 2 to get the Blue Jays in the playoffs? And as the playoffs in 2021 played out, what did we see? If the Blue Jays made the playoffs that season, they were going to win the whole thing. Remember, Atlanta won it all in 2021. Blue Jays smashed Atlanta. They were 6-0, and they smashed them every single time they played them. So I'd rather see the team success than the individual success. And Yusei Kikuchi, when he's been on the mound this season, 20 starts, Blue Jays 13-7. Also want to mention that Yusei Kikuchi made 20 starts for the Blue Jays last season also. So we can compare apples to apples at this point. 20 starts last season, 20 starts this season. Last season, in Kikuchi's 20 starts, 49 walks. This season, that's down to 31. Significant improvement for the southpaw Yusei Kikuchi with filling up the strike zone this season. 91 strikeouts last season in those 20 starts, 108. Okay, Yusei, I'm seeing a lot of improvements here. I'm seeing you pound the strike zone. I'm loving it. His own record last season in the 20 games as a starter, 4-7 with a 5.25 ERA. Gross. This season in the 20 starts, instead of 4-7, how about 7-3? Instead of the 5.25 ERA, how about 3.92? Blue Jays in those 20 games we talk about, I just want wins and losses, right, for the team. Blue Jays in those 20 Kikuchi starts last season, 6-14. Vomit emoji, 6-14. This season, 13-7. The eye test tells you Kikuchi's been much better, and the actual stats, the production tells you he's been much better. Now, truth be told, the eye test will still show you that Yusei Kikuchi's still getting hit hard and often, but he's been so much better this season at limiting the damage. Yusei Kikuchi's allowed 22 home runs this season. That's amongst the worst in all of baseball, but 14 of those have been solo home runs. Last season, half of his home runs allowed a crooked number right away. Last season, half of the home runs Kikuchi allowed were 2 runs or 3 runs on the board right away for the opposition. And one of those 2 or one of those 3 runs was always what? A walk. Was always a free batter. So Yusei Kikuchi's not doing that this season. Still getting hit hard, still getting taken deep a lot. But the solo home runs, such a different animal than the 2 or the 3 run home runs. A solo home run here, a solo home run there, man, your offense should be able to bail you out and help you out in those situations. So Yusei Kikuchi, the way he's limited damage this season, 2 thumbs way up. The only Dodgers who have really faced Yusei a lot are the former Red Sox, Mookie Betts and JD Martinez. Mookie Betts just 1 for 8 versus Yusei Kikuchi. Okay, Yusei, keep that up tonight. And JD Martinez just 2 for 9 against Yusei. Now, both of the 2 hits did leave the ballpark. They were both home runs, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But ultimately, big picture-wise, Mookie Betts and JD Martinez combined 3 for 17 versus Yusei Kikuchi. Yeah, I'm excited about that. A stunner here is that the Dodgers are just 12-15 so far this season versus lefties. They are smashing righties, but lefties are beating them this season, which is really, really odd. The Dodgers are one of the best teams in baseball last season against southpaws. They were 32-16 last season against lefties, 12-15 so far this season. Again, I'm going to say let's hope that is another one of the trends that we're seeing here that we hope continues. Tony Gonsolin, righty on the good-looking righty. I like Tony Gonsolin. I think he's got a big future here. He's on the mound for the Dodgers. Made some nice adjustments in the offseason. He's pitching fairly well. 5-3 record, 3.94 ERA. Now, the Dodgers are just 8-7 in Gonsolin's 15 starts so far this season, but do need to mention they've won his last 3 starts, and they're 5-2 when he started at home. He's been significantly better at home. But the one glass half full for the Toronto Blue Jays in this game, this is a day game. Gonsolin's had at least 3 or 4 day games this season, and he's been rocked every single time. Tony Gonsolin has been rocked in day games. So yet again, hey, a trend that we hope continues, right? Tony Gonsolin, his four-seamer and his split finger, his four-seam fastball and his split-finger fastball are both big-time pitches for Tony Gonsolin. But the slider and his curveball, both of those pitches have been vulnerable. So if you're the Blue Jays tonight and you're reading spin coming out of his hand, get ready to do some damage, because there's been times this season, Gonsolin will tell you too many times, where it's just spun there. It hasn't had the break, the slider or the curve hasn't had the break he was looking for, and they just sat there in the middle of the strike zone looking to have damage done to them. Toronto Blue Jays need to be looking to pick those out tonight. Dalton Varsho, he's the only one who's really faced Gonsolin a lot. Dalton Varsho just 2 for 14 in his career against Tony Gonsolin. And a reminder, of course, this game is available this afternoon, right, on Sirius XM. Coming up on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, we continue our ongoing conversations about the potential players that the Toronto Blue Jays could and in my opinion anyway, should be targeting as the trade deadline rapidly approaches. Now, first, I wanted to talk about a new sponsor we're thrilled to have, Sleeper. Sleeper is a fantasy sports and real money gaming app focused on bringing people together through sports and gaming. Sleeper's become the fastest organically growing fantasy platform in the world, over 5 million active users in 2022, while earning some of the highest levels of engagement per user in the industry. How cool is that? At Sleeper, it's not just about sports, it's about building personal connections and lasting memories. Swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Predict the hottest baseball stats like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and much more. And if you cash in your daily fantasy baseball skills, like for example, have you looked at, we were looking at earlier, I mean, Yusei Kikuchi, he's dominated Mookie Betts and JD Martinez. So tonight, you may want to take the unders for Mookie Betts and JD Martinez. You know, how many hits will they get, home runs, things like that. We just talked about Yusei Kikuchi dominates these guys. So hopefully that's a few picks right there to get your ticket going tonight. Use the promo code Locked On, and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Yes, you can swing for the fences with the promo code Locked On at sign up, and you'll get a deposit match up to $100. So check out Sleeper today. Now, as we've been discussing when it comes to the Toronto Blue Jays and trades, I just don't see the Toronto Blue Jays having the return assets to be able to go big game hunting. So I do think the trade deadline is going to be rounding out some edges, similar to last season, right? And remember last season, there were 5 players added, 4 via trades, and then 1 the next day when the smoke settled from all the trades and the releases and things like that. So the Blue Jays from one day to the next last season had 5 different players on their roster. That's significant. It's only a 26-man roster, 5 just like that. That's significant turnover. You'll remember the trade deadline. That was Anthony Bass. That was Mitch White. That was Zach Pop. That was Whit Merrifield. And then the next day, Jackie Bradley Jr. So, and all of that with extremely little going out the door for the Toronto Blue Jays. These are all very affordable return assets for the Blue Jays. So their return assets to acquire these guys and make those changes, what they hope were improvements, in some cases, yes, in some cases, not so much, right? But same idea. They weren't costly. That's what I think we're going to look. That's what I think we're going to see this season from the Toronto Blue Jays. So no, sorry, I don't think the Jays are in on Shohei. If Soto becomes available, things like that, I just don't see it. Remember, any big game hunting that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to do is going to require Ricky Tiedemann going the other way, and I'm just way not in for that myself personally. I'm not in for that at all. I think Ricky Tiedemann has a massive future on the big league level, and I want it to be in Toronto. I want it to be in Canada, repping the Blue Jays. Call me crazy, right? Now, we looked at the NL Central Cubs yesterday. Well, how about a couple of other teams in the NL Central that I think are very likely going to be open for business as the trade deadline approaches? One of my absolute favorite ones, Pittsburgh Pirates, David Bednar. This is a reliever that a lot of Blue Jay fans wanted last season. At this point last season, if you take your mind's eye back, the Pittsburgh Pirates were fancying themselves as being on the verge of being a contender. The Pirates thought that 2023 was going to go very differently. They've had a lot of bad injuries, so they've not only has it not gone differently for them, they're a last place team at this point. Well, careening towards last place anyway. They've struggled mightily, spent some time in first place, but it's just been such a free fall, and they've had a lot of injuries as well. So not only are they not the wins and losses team that they thought they would be in 2023, but they're not even getting the development from their young players because they have so many injuries. I mean, last season, it would have taken a Tiedemann. It would have taken something massive to land David Bednar. This season, he's about to go into his first year of arbitration, so he's very affordable, and it would not surprise me if to see that David Bednar could be had from the Pirates this season at the trade deadline. Now, when you're talking about David Bednar, if you haven't seen this guy, I mean, a very good curveball, but the fastball, oh my gosh, his fastball is as good as there is in baseball. You can't do damage to it. You can't square it up. He's awesome. He's been an all-star the last 2 seasons. I think he's an absolute sensational arm for the back of this bullpen. Now, it's akin to big game hunting because he's so good, back-to-back all-stars, extremely affordable contract. So it's almost big game hunting. I just don't see a Tiedemann being needed at this point because of what Pittsburgh's gone through. I think Pittsburgh might be looking for, 2 or 3. They might be looking for quantity and hope that one of those 2 or 3 guys works out as opposed to quality. That may be wishful thinking on my end, right? That may be wishful thinking, but bottom line, I'm not going to be surprised that we find out that David Bednar is available. With the Pittsburgh Pirates as well, you have Mitch Keller. He can add to this rotation for the Blue Jays. He's heading into his second arbitration season, so pretty affordable. This season, he's having his career best season for strikeouts. He was an all-star this season as well. He was a fellow all-star with David Bednar. And what I really like here about Mitch Keller, in particular for the Toronto Blue Jays, this season, he had a game where he pitched really well against the Boston Red Sox. You know that's coming up with the Toronto Blue Jays, big series with the Red Sox. He's pitched very well against the Tampa Bay Rays. 6 of the last 9 games of the season for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays are against the Tampa Bay Rays, so he would definitely get one. You could even finagle it where he ends up with 2 of those starts down the stretch against the Rays, 2 massive starts, which I would be up for because he's pitched well against them this season. And you know that the Blue Jays ultimately, we thought they'd have to try to catch Tampa Bay for the division. Now we see they're going to have to catch Baltimore for the division. Mitch Keller had an absolute gem. One of the best games I've seen pitched all season long by anybody this season was Mitch Keller against the Baltimore Orioles. So, and he hasn't faced the Yankees, certainly not to my mind, certainly not to my knowledge, he's faced the Yankees, but those other 3 AL East foes, Baltimore, Tampa, and Boston, man, Mitch Keller this season alone has been excellent against all 3 of those opponents, and all 3 of those opponents are coming up for the Toronto Blue Jays. Andrew McCutchen, if you wanted to expand this trade, Andrew McCutchen, there's the right-handed bat that the Blue Jays could use against lefties. You know he's a veteran. You know he's going to fit right into the clubhouse. He's not looking to leave Pittsburgh, so if he does get traded, whoever does pick him up can be a team that's excited to acquire him because you're getting someone who Pittsburgh would have been working in conjunction with Andrew McCutchen to head to this team. So if McCutchen does become a Toronto Blue Jay, it's because he's really excited about becoming a Toronto Blue Jay. You get a veteran with his great attitude. He leads the Pirates right now with a 269 batting average. I know 269 batting average isn't really something to write home about, but still pretty impressive that he leads the team in hitting, and he also leads the Pirates with an on-base percentage. Now his on-base percentage, 269 for the batting average, not that impressive. 385 though on base percentage for the veteran. That is definitely impressive. And he's an impending free agent. So again, somebody who ultimately just isn't going to break the bank, isn't going to cost a whole lot for the Toronto Blue Jays to acquire. Let's keep it in the NL Central. Let's head over to the St. Louis Cardinals. Now the St. Louis Cardinals, I don't know what to make of them. Not just, coming into the season. Remember, the Blue Jays opened this season by losing 2 out of 3 in St. Louis. We weren't happy about that. We were a little bit crestfallen about it, but we did write it off pretty quickly because it was like, well, every team going into St. Louis this season is going to lose 2 out of 3. Like, we're not devastated by this. It doesn't mean anything one way or the other for the Toronto Blue Jays. Well, as 2023 has played itself out, my goodness, St. Louis has been awful. They've said they were going to make trades. Now it looks like some of the bigger names like the Goldschmidts, the Arenados will not be traded. But my question for St. Louis is, what about impending free agent? So the price is going to be right, hopefully, for the Blue Jays. Lefty starter, Jordan Montgomery. Now, Jordan Montgomery right now sports a 2.1 WAR. That would tie him on the team high. Kevin Gausman's WAR right now is a 2.1. It's the tops on the Blue Jays. So Jordan Montgomery would walk in the door tied with Kevin Gausman for the top WAR on the team. He's a ground ball pitcher that's going to play at Rogers Center, home run happy Rogers Center. Let's get the ground ball pitcher in there. And Jordan Montgomery, I mean, what have we seen from him this year? Have you been impressed? Wow, he'll get you with his sinker. He'll get you with his changeup. He'll get you with his curveball. And I'm talking strikeouts and just regular outs as well. Jordan Montgomery, even when St. Louis has sort of walked back, remember they came out saying we're definitely going to be making trades. They've walked that back a little bit, but for me, it seems like they walked it back for the Goldschmidts and the Arenados, not for somebody like Jordan Montgomery. I'll be very surprised, in fact, if Jordan Montgomery is not traded from the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, could you expand the trade and add flame-throwing 100 miles per hour plus reliever Jordan Hicks? Again, an impending free agent. So again, the price is not going to be, astronomical. It could be something affordable for the Toronto Blue Jays. What do we know about Jordan Hicks? An absolute strikeout machine. Too many walks. Very true. Too many walks. 8 saves on the season, 6 holds, 3 blown saves. So you see 8 saves and 6 holds. So he's getting end of the game opportunities for the St. Louis Cardinals. And what's really incredible, there's a few things here. Now, you talk about just open, honest conversation, strikeout machine, but too many walks. Well, if Pete Walker and the Blue Jays think they can harness Hicks's control and even slightly, I'm not looking for miracles here, even slightly reduce his walks, then I think Jordan Hicks could be a big-time late-inning bullpen arm for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays, at least, if not going forward, but at least for the rest of this season. And really, when you look at Jordan Hicks's numbers on the surface, you're not going to be all that impressed. But I want you to understand, or I want to mention that his issues have come in St. Louis. For some reason, and in that ballpark, on that mound, with those sightlines, whatever it is about that ballpark in St. Louis, it doesn't work for Jordan Hicks. Outside of St. Louis, like when he's on a road ballpark, on a road mound, Jordan Hicks has been cash money. His career, and that's not just this season, that's over his career. His career ERA is under 3 on the road, and his career ERA at St. Louis is 5. Currently, Eric Swanson is the backup closer for retired Jordan Romano, but I mean, I think Jordan Hicks steps in and becomes that guy, and certainly Jordan Hicks steps in and takes some of the wear and tear off of Eric Swanson in the late innings as well as the 7th and 8th inning guy as well. I would like that move. I know a lot of people a lot of Blue Jay fans, and I get why, want that outfielder coming in that's going to be able to hit left-handed pitching. I know a lot of Blue Jay fans are high on Tyler O'Neill. I think most of that, all due respect to Tyler O'Neill, is because he is a good Canadian boy, right, from Burnaby, BC. But and in his career, he hits over 800 in OPS against lefties. But if you're looking to expand this trade for the Blue Jays, then for me, it's Dylan Carlson. Dylan Carlson not playing every day for St. Louis. He's come back from injury now. 397 on base percentage in his career versus lefties. 397 on base percentage and an OPS over 800 this season as well, by the way, versus lefties. Sorry, that's this. I beg your pardon. 397 on base percentage this season. Beg your pardon. In his career, in Dylan Carson's career versus left-handed pitchers, you tell me, is this good? 310 batting average, 381 on base percentage, 858 OPS career against lefties. I mean, is that good? My goodness. He makes about $750,000 this season and is heading into his arbitration year. So he's extremely affordable as well. The Cardinals, that's one thing they have, a lot of young, high upside outfielders. So Dylan Carlson's sort of just getting lost in the mix there. He could really, really provide some things, in my opinion anyway, for the Toronto Blue Jays. Third and final segment of Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Blue Jay podcast. Again, remember now, Locked On Blue Jay podcast, only daily Blue Jay pod there is. So tune in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday each week. And it's trivia time. Usually we like to do Trivia Tuesday, but yesterday's show was so packed we didn't get to it. So I'm glad we're going to get to it today here. Trivia Tuesday, the Wednesday edition. And a pair of former Toronto Blue Jays, Fred McGriff and Scott Rowland, were just inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame this past weekend. So I thought we'd have some fun with some trivia questions surrounding those two. Now, if you're new to the trivia section that we do here, or the trivia that we do, I'm going to ask. It's 6 questions we have here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 6 questions that I've got this week. I'll ask all 6, so you can go ahead and pause if you want to think about. Oh boy, you know that the answer to number 4 is on the tip of my tongue. If you want to have a second to think about it, please just pause it and then press play after the 6 are asked, because I'm going to get right back in. After I ask the 6 questions, I'm going to jump right back in and give you the 6 answers. Let's have some fun and let's get into this. Starting with September 14th, 1987, epic day, not just in Toronto Blue Jay franchise history, in Major League Baseball history, as the Toronto Blue Jays set a Major League Baseball record that still stands to this day as they walloped 10 home runs in that one game, 18-3 beatdown over the Baltimore Orioles. How many home runs did Fred McGriff hit in that record-setting game? In his career, Fred McGriff, the crime dog, was a 5-time All-Star. How many of those All-Star appearances for Fred McGriff was he representing the Toronto Blue Jays? 5-time All-Star. How many times as a Toronto Blue Jay? Question number 3. In 1989, as a Blue Jay, Fred McGriff led the league in home runs. How many did he hit? Question number 4. What Blue Jay legend was acquired in exchange for Scott Rowland? Blue Jays had Scott Rowland, and until Chapman got here, and I mean, Chapman's been good defensively, but I still probably think Scott Rowland's the best defensive third baseman I ever saw play for the Toronto Blue Jays. But I mean, if you're going to say Chapman, you're going to have a case to be made as well, right? Matt Chapman is spectacular defensively, but Scott Rowland was the Matt Chapman defensively before Matt Chapman. Scott Rowland was a special defender down there at the hot corner. Now, he played about a season and a half for the Blue Jays, and then the Blue Jays traded him. Who did they trade him for? And it's a superstar in Blue Jay lore. 5th question. Did Fred McGriff ever win a World Series ring? 6th and final question. Did Scott Rowland ever earn a World Series ring? Pause this here for a quick sec. Think about your answers. Okay, and just like that, we're back, right? Okay, so let's get into the answers for these 6 trivia questions. The first trivia question was September 14th, 1987. Blue Jays set a still to this day Major League Baseball record, 10 home runs hit by the Jays. Ernie Witt had 3. Rance Mulliniks had 2. George Bell had 2. So that gets us up to 7. Lloyd Mosby hit the 8th. Rob Ducey hit the 9th. That leaves 1 for Fred McGriff. And it was the last one, too. If Fred McGriff led off the bottom of the 8th with the 10th home run of the game, that gave the Blue Jays a little bit of breathing room in the bottom of the 8th. It was only a 17-3 lead. Fred McGriff gave him some breathing room, made it 18-3. Yes, clearly I'm being sarcastic there. Yes, indeed. But one of the all-time games for the Toronto Blue Jays. And remember now, that was 1987. So everydayers will know, a couple Throwback Thursdays ago, we deep dived the 1987 Toronto Blue Jays, who authored one of the collapses, not just in Toronto Blue Jay franchise history, in baseball history. The 1987 Toronto Blue Jays authored one of the greatest collapses in baseball history. And of course, that was September 14th is this home run game. And then the next 2 weeks after that is when the collapse happened. Oh boy. So real feast or famine for that 87 team. Now, we asked, in his career, Fred McGriff was a 5-time All-Star. How many times did he represent the Toronto Blue Jays in the All-Star game? Did you say none? Because if you did, you're correct. Fred McGriff was an All-Star as a San Diego Padre. 3 times he was an All-Star representing the Atlanta Braves, and 1 time Fred McGriff was an All-Star representing the Tampa Bay then Devil Rays. I think a lot of people forget that McGriff had big seasons for the Tampa Bay then Devil Rays. We asked, in 1989, as a Blue Jay, Fred McGriff led the league in home runs. How many did he hit? Do you remember this one? It's not if you're searching for a big number, pare it way down. You come to take many steps backwards if you're looking for a huge number. Fred McGriff had 36 home runs that season, led the league. He would lead the league again in 1992, so about 3 seasons later, he would lead the league again in home runs. This time, the trade to the Padres had happened, and he was a Padre in 92, and he led the league with 35 home runs that season. So Fred McGriff, twice in his Hall of Fame career, led the league in home runs. 1 was 36, 1 was 35. Different times, right? Different times. Asked, what Blue Jay legend was acquired in exchange for Scott Rowland? J.P. Ricciardi was the general manager at the time. He called the Cincinnati Reds. All he wanted was Josh Renicky and Zach Stewart in exchange for Scott Rowland. And for some insane reason, I don't know, I don't get it, were they trying to do well by Edwin to send him somewhere with more playing time? I don't know. But I know that the answer to this question is the Cincinnati Reds insisted, in addition to Josh Renicky and Zach Stewart in exchange for Scott Rowland, the Reds insisted that Edwin Encarnacion be included in that trade too. That's how the Blue Jays got Edwin Encarnacion, from the Cincinnati Reds insisting he be included in a trade to them. Thank you, Cincinnati Reds. Thank you, Cincinnati Reds. We asked if Fred McGriff ever earned a World Series ring. Did you get this one? You might have even thought that he had, but do you remember the team it was with? Because Fred McGriff did win a World Series ring with the 1995 Atlanta Braves. He would go back to the World Series with them in 96. I believe, if I remember correctly, that was the Yankees beating them that season. I think 96 was the year where the Braves were up 2-0 on the Yankees as well, and they stormed back and won that World Series. So Fred McGriff, was that close to even repeating as a champion, but he did win. He was on the World Series champions in 1995. Atlanta Braves does have the World Series ring. Now I asked, did Scott Rowland earn a World Series ring? Yes, he did. 2006 St. Louis Cardinals. Now, that's a wrap for Wednesday's episode of the Locked On Blue Jay podcast. Sure hope you enjoyed it. I certainly thank you for spending time talking Blue Jay baseball with me today. Be sure to check in tomorrow, as yes, the Toronto Blue Jays are off tomorrow, but we'll have Throwback Thursday, Blue Jay stories. And on Friday, how excited am I about this? I hope you're going to get excited too. On Friday, friend of the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, Jay Jackson, back in the house, talking his career, talking Blue Jay baseball. And we're going to get into what it's like for MLB players around this time of the year. What's it like for MLB players around trade deadline time? Go Jays, go. And we'll talk tomorrow.